Daniel Carter pushed open the glass door of the small pawn shop, and a soft bell chimed above his head. The sound was gentle, almost old-fashioned. The kind of bell that made you feel like you had stepped into another time. He paused in the doorway for a moment, taking a slow breath as the smell of polished wood and faint metal greeted him. The shop was warm, quiet, and filled with shelves that held little bits of other people's pasts. Old watches, musical instruments, handcrafted vases, worn books, and small trinkets that carried stories of their own. To anyone else, it might have looked like an ordinary shop, but for Daniel, walking inside felt like the hardest step he had taken since returning home. He stood still for a moment, adjusting the strap of his bag on his shoulder. His clothes were simple faded jeans, a plain t-shirt, and a jacket that had seen better days. His hair was neatly cut, but his tired eyes revealed how much he had been carrying inside. Daniel wasn't the kind of man who liked drawing attention. He preferred to move quietly, to stay unnoticed. But even in his quiet nature, there was something about him that told you he had lived through things that changed him deeply. He looked around, scanning the shop with a careful gaze. It wasn't crowded, which made him feel a bit more at ease. Only one other customer stood near a shelf of old radios, speaking softly on their phone. The shop owner, Mr. Lawson, stood behind the wooden counter at the back, adjusting a small display case filled with rings. The soft yellow light in the shop reflected gently off the polished surfaces, giving the whole place a cozy, almost calming glow. Daniel swallowed hard. He knew why he had come. He knew what he had tucked in the small pouch inside his jacket. But knowing it didn't make it easier. His fingers brushed over the pouch, feeling the familiar shape of the old metal inside. For a moment, he hesitated again, silently asking himself if he was truly ready to do this. But he had to. Life had not been easy since he returned home. Bills kept arriving. His savings were almost gone. Finding steady work had been harder than he expected. He had sent out dozens of applications and gone to several interviews, but nothing seemed to work out yet. He was trying, truly trying. But life seemed to keep moving ahead while he stood stuck in place. The stress weighed on him in a way he tried not to show, but it was always there, quiet, heavy, and persistent. He finally took a step forward and began walking toward the counter. Each step felt slow, as if his feet were moving through something heavier than air. He could feel his heart beating faster, not from fear, but from a deep sadness that he had been pushing aside for days. Mr. Lawson, who had been focused on arranging the rings, looked up when he heard Daniel's footsteps. His face brightened with a small, polite smile. He was a man in his early 60s, with gentle eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and neatly combed silver hair. He wore a sweater vest and a warm expression, the kind of person who made you feel comfortable without even trying. "Good afternoon," Mr. Lawson said in a soft, welcoming voice. "Take your time. Let me know if you need help with anything." Daniel nodded slightly, and though he appreciated the kindness in the man's tone, the words made his chest tighten. He wasn't here to browse. He wasn't here to buy. He was here because he had run out of better choices. When he reached the counter, he stood still for a moment, unsure of how to start. He looked down at his hands, noticing the faint marks from where he had gripped the strap of his bag too tightly earlier. He exhaled slowly. "Hi," he finally said, his voice quiet but steady. Mr. Lawson smiled kindly. "Hello there. What can I help you with today?" Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. He had rehearsed what he wanted to say on the way to the shop, but the words suddenly felt heavier now that he was here. He reached into his jacket pocket and gently pulled out the small pouch. His hand shook just a little, but he steadied himself. I want to sell something," he said. The shop owner nodded patiently. "Of course. May I take a look?" Daniel placed the pouch gently on the counter, handling it with more care than most people might use with delicate glass. He slowly opened it and revealed the old metal inside. The metal was aged, its edges worn smooth from years of being held and treasured. The ribbon attached to it was faded but still strong, its colors telling a story of honor and dedication. Mr. Lawson leaned forward to get a clearer view. His gentle smile softened as he saw the metal. though he made no sudden expression. He reached out, but not immediately. He waited until Daniel gave a small nod of permission. Only then did he lift the metal with slow, respectful hands. Daniel watched him examine it. He felt a strange mixture of sadness and guilt washing over him, as if he were betraying a part of his own history. He hadn't wanted to reach this point. The metal wasn't just an object. It wasn't just old metal and ribbon. It was a piece of his father, a man he loved deeply, a man he wished he could still talk to. His father had always spoken with quiet pride about the importance of honor and doing the right thing. And even though he had passed away years ago, Daniel still carried those lessons within him. But life had grown complicated. Caring for himself while trying to rebuild a future had become harder than he expected. He had avoided coming to this shop for weeks, telling himself he would find another way, but the other ways had run out, and now the only thing left was this metal, his father's metal. As Mr. Lawson held the metal up to the light, Daniel shifted slightly, feeling a wave of discomfort. His father would never be upset with him. He knew that. His father would understand that sometimes life required difficult decisions, but even knowing that didn't make this moment any less painful. Mr. Lawson's eyes moved cautiously over the metal, examining the details carved into the metal. His brows lowered slightly, and his expression changed, though not in a negative way. It changed in a way Daniel couldn't quite understand. It was subtle, like someone remembering something from long ago. "What can you tell me about it, Mr.?" Lawson asked gently. Daniel opened his mouth, but the words came slower now. "It belonged to my dad," he said quietly. "He got it a long time ago. I don't know everything about how he earned it. He didn't talk much about those days, but it was important to him." Mr. Lawson nodded, still studying the metal with thoughtful eyes. "It's a beautiful piece," he said softly. "Well cared for." Daniel nodded once, though his throat felt tight. "I need to sell it," he said. "Just for now. I'll buy it back as soon as I can." His voice cracked just slightly at the end, and he cleared his throat quietly, hoping the shop owner didn't notice. But Mr. Lawson noticed everything. Years of dealing with people and their stories had given him a quiet understanding of the emotions people tried to hide. "I understand," Mr. Lawson said, his tone warm and respectful. "Let me take a closer look." Daniel stepped back a little and clasped his hands together, trying to calm the nervous energy in his chest. He didn't want to seem desperate, even though he felt desperately attached to the metal. He wanted to stay composed, to show strength, even when he felt fragile inside. He looked around the shop again, letting his gaze fall on the small shelves of books and picture frames. Everything in the shop had a story. People only sold things they once held dear when life pushed them into corners. And today, he was one of those people. He wished things were different. He wished he didn't have to make this choice. But here he was, standing in a quiet pawn shop, hoping that letting go of something precious just for a little while might help him keep his head above water. And even though he didn't know it yet, this moment, this quiet step into a small pawn shop, was about to lead him to something he never expected. Daniel stood quietly while Mr. Lawson examined the metal. The shop was still and calm, yet inside Daniel everything felt tangled. The longer he waited, the heavier the moment became. He kept reminding himself that this was temporary, that he would get the metal back one day. But the worry inside him didn't ease. His thoughts kept circling like leaves in a gentle wind, shifting from hope to doubt, then back to hope again. Mr. Lawson turned the metal over slowly, studying the ribbon, the shine, the engraved name on the back. Daniel watched the shop owner's expression, trying to read the quiet questions behind his eyes. Something about the way Mr. Lawson held the metal felt different. He wasn't just checking its value. He was looking at it with real attention, almost as if he was looking at something he remembered. Daniel felt a slight ache in his chest. He didn't want anyone else to look at the metal that way. It felt too personal, too connected to memories he kept close. But he also knew he had come here for help, and help often came with moments like this, moments where he had to share parts of himself. "Your father," Mr. Lawson said after a few slow breaths. "He must have taken great care of this." Daniel nodded. "He did. He kept it in a box in his desk. Sometimes he would take it out and clean it. Even though he rarely talked about how he earned it. What was he like? Mr. Lawson asked gently, setting the metal on a soft cloth. Daniel looked down at the surface of the counter, letting his fingers tap softly against it. Part of him felt shy about talking, and another part felt warm at the thought of his father. He was a calm man, Daniel said. Quiet, but strong in ways you didn't always see at first. He liked helping people, and he always tried to do the right thing, even if it made things harder for him. Mr. Lawson listened closely, the way someone listens, not just with ears but with their whole attention. The shop owner folded the cloth carefully, as though he didn't want to disturb the metal's place on it. It sounds like he was a good man, Mr. Lawson said. Daniel smiled, slightly small, but sincere. He was. The bell above the door chimed softly as the other customer left, and the shop fell completely silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. That stillness made Daniel even more aware of how lonely he felt. Since returning home, he had been trying to hold himself together, trying to face things with strength. But strength was hard to maintain when the days felt long and uncertain. He looked at Mr. Lawson, then looked away again, unsure whether to speak. But something inside him nudged him gently forward. I didn't want to sell it, Daniel said quietly. I still don't. But things have been difficult. Mr. Lawson nodded thoughtfully. You don't have to explain if it feels uncomfortable. But Daniel felt the need to speak, as if saying the words out loud might help him breathe a little easier. I've been applying for jobs, he continued. But nothing has worked out yet. I'm trying not to fall behind on bills. I thought maybe selling this, even just for a little while, might help me get through this month. Mr. Lawson didn't say anything at first. He simply listened, giving Daniel time to express what he had been holding inside. It's strange, Daniel went on, because my dad always told me that challenges make you stronger. He would say that storms don't last forever, even when they feel endless. I keep trying to remember that, but lately, it feels like the storm is taking its time. His voice grew softer. He wasn't crying, but there was a quiet heaviness there, a weight carried in silence for too long. Mr. Lawson shifted slightly, placing both hands gently on the counter. Life can test us in ways that feel unfair, he said warmly. But your father's words hold truth. Storms do pass, and sometimes, help comes in places we don't expect. Daniel didn't know how to respond. He nodded again, grateful for the kindness, but still unsure of what the shop owner was thinking. He wondered what the metal was worth. He wondered if Mr. Lawson would even want to buy it. He wondered if he would leave the shop with enough money to get through the week. As he waited, his thoughts drifted to the last time he had held the metal before today. He remembered sitting at his small kitchen table late at night, turning it over in his hand. The apartment had been silent except for the ticking of the clock. He had thought about his father, about everything he had taught him, and he had wished deeply that he didn't have to do this. He wished his father were still there to give him advice, to tell him what to do next. But life didn't always give second chances or easy answers. Mr. Lawson cleared his throat softly, pulling Daniel's attention back to the present. May I ask, he said, what your father's name was? Daniel hesitated for a second, not because he didn't want to answer, but because saying the name out loud felt more emotional than he expected. William Carter, he said. The shop owner's eyes widened just a little, almost too subtle to notice, but Daniel caught it. It was the kind of reaction someone had when they recognized something important. But Mr. Lawson didn't comment on it yet. He simply nodded and looked back at the metal, his expression thoughtful in a deeper, more personal way. William Carter, he repeated softly, almost like he was tasting the name on his tongue, letting it stir something in his memory. Daniel waited, feeling a gentle curiosity rising inside him. Why had the name caused that reaction? Had the shop owner heard of his father? Was it just a coincidence? I think I may have known someone by that name, Mr. Lawson said at last, though he spoke carefully, as if he wasn't fully sure yet. It was a long time ago. Many years before I opened this shop. Daniel's eyebrows lifted slightly. You knew him? Mr. Lawson gave a small, thoughtful smile. Not a cheerful smile, but the kind that came from a memory that mattered. I believe so. But I want to make sure. Give me a moment. He gently placed the medal back on the cloth and reached beneath the counter. Daniel watched with rising interest as Mr. Lawson pulled out a small wooden box. The box looked old. The wood darkened with time, the hinges slightly worn. It wasn't the kind of item used often. It was the kind that held things of personal value. Mr. Lawson set the box on the counter but did not open it yet. Instead, he looked at Daniel with a patient expression. Before I open this, he said softly, may I ask you something? Daniel nodded, though he wasn't sure what to expect. Did your father ever mention serving with someone named Lawson? Mr. Lawson asked. Daniel thought for a moment, searching through faint memories. His father had shared only small stories about his earlier years, and most of them were simple moments, nothing detailed. He mentioned names here and there, Daniel said slowly. I'm not sure. He didn't talk much about his early service days. Mr. Lawson nodded as if he understood completely. That's all right, he said. Many people don't talk about their past much. Sometimes, memories feel too personal to share. The shop fell quiet again. The soft light hovered gently over the counter, casting small reflections off the metal edges of the metal. Daniel felt a growing sense of curiosity mixed with something hopeful. Mr. Lawson finally opened the wooden box. Inside, there were several small items, a few old photographs, a folded piece of paper, and a pair of pins that looked similar to the metal on the cloth. Daniel leaned in slightly, carefully, not wanting to seem intrusive but unable to hide his interest. I kept these for many years, Mr. Lawson said quietly. They belonged to someone I respected a great deal. Daniel looked at the photos. One of them showed a group of young men standing together, smiling at the camera. And near the center of the photo, Daniel's heart skipped a beat. He recognized a familiar face. It was younger, full of energy and promise, but unmistakably, his father. That's him, Daniel whispered, pointing at the picture. That's my dad. Mr. Lawson's eyes softened. Yes, he said in a warm, gentle tone. I thought so. Daniel felt a rush of emotions he couldn't quite name, surprise, gratitude, and something like relief. He had come here ready to let go of something important, hoping only for help. But now he stood on the edge of a new discovery, one that could change everything he understood about his father's past. And this was only the beginning of what the shop owner was about to reveal. Daniel stared at the photograph for a long moment, almost forgetting to breathe. It felt unreal, seeing his father in a place and time he had only heard small pieces about. The young man in the picture looked confident and hopeful, standing among friends who seemed close enough to be family. There was a light in his father's eyes, something Daniel had never seen in person because life had changed him long before Daniel was old enough to understand. Mr. Lawson watched Daniel's reaction quietly, giving him space. He didn't speak until Daniel finally looked up, still holding the photograph as gently as someone might hold something fragile. I can't believe you knew him, Daniel said softly, his voice filled with wonder more than shock. Mr. Lawson smiled in a calm, thoughtful way. It has been many years, but some people leave impressions that time cannot wash away. Your father was one of those people. Daniel felt warmth fill his chest, like a soft light spreading through him. He didn't know what Mr. Lawson meant yet, but hearing someone speak about his father in that tone made his heart feel fuller. Tell me about him, Daniel said, almost whispering. Please. I don't know a lot about his early years. Mr. Lawson nodded and gently lifted another photo from the wooden box. He held it at an angle toward Daniel. We were young then, he began slowly. Your father and I worked together for some time. He was quiet, much like you. But he had a way of making people feel at ease. And he was the kind of person who always helped others, even in difficult moments. Daniel listened carefully. His mind formed images around every word, images of a young William Carter, laughing with friends, offering a hand when someone needed it, walking with quiet confidence. showing strength not through loud actions but through gentle consistency. He never talked about himself much, Mr. Lawson continued, but he paid attention to the people around him. He noticed when someone was troubled. He noticed when someone needed encouragement. And he always offered it with honesty. Daniel smiled faintly. That sounded exactly like his father. The father he remembered from childhood. His dad wasn't someone who gave long lectures or tried to impress anyone. But when he spoke, the advice always came from a place of understanding and care. Mr. Lawson looked at the medal on the cloth again. He earned this for something meaningful, he said. He didn't chase recognition, but he earned respect easily. People trusted him. They looked up to him. Daniel felt a gentle ache inside. He had known his father was kind and dependable. But hearing someone else say these things made the memories feel even more real. It was like rediscovering a part of him he had never fully known. What happened? Daniel asked quietly. Not asking about anything painful, but simply wanting to know why Mr. Lawson still had these items. Mr. Lawson took a slow breath, not out of discomfort but out of reflection. Toward the end of our time working together, he said, we were preparing for a transition. I was going to return home, and your father was moving into a new chapter of his service. Before we parted ways, he gave me these things. He lightly touched the wooden box. He said, hold on to these for now. I'll get them from you later when life settles. But life carried us in different directions. He moved. I moved. And back then it was easier to lose contact than it is today. Daniel nodded slowly. He understood how life could scatter people. How years could pass without meaning to separate anyone. His father had rarely talked about those days, and Daniel now realized that there were probably more stories than he ever imagined. Did you try to reach him? Daniel asked gently. I did, Mr. Lawson replied. But by the time I found an address that matched, he had already moved again. And then, later, he paused respectfully. I heard he had passed, though I never learned the details. It saddened me greatly. Daniel lowered his eyes, feeling a twist of emotion. Yeah, he said softly. I was young when it happened. I'm sorry, Mr. Lawson said, sincerity filling his voice. Daniel nodded gratefully. It wasn't a painful kind of sadness, just a quiet longing for someone he wished he could talk to now. More than ever. After a moment of silence, Daniel asked, how did you feel when you saw the medal today? Mr. Lawson gave a gentle smile that held dozens of quiet memories. I felt like life had finally brought something full circle, he said. Seeing his name, seeing this medal, it brought back moments I hadn't thought of in a long time. He placed a hand on the edge of the counter, leaning slightly forward. I also felt that maybe this was not a simple coincidence. Maybe this was meant to happen today. Daniel looked at him, confusion mixing with curiosity. What do you mean? Mr. Lawson gestured toward the wooden box. I held on to these things for years. I didn't know what to do with them. They belonged to your father, but I couldn't return them because I didn't know where his family was. And I didn't feel right selling or giving them away. So I kept them, thinking that one day the right moment would come. Daniel felt a shiver not of fear, but of something deeper, something meaningful. You waited all this time? He asked quietly. I did, Mr. Lawson said simply. And today, the moment finally arrived. Daniel blinked slowly, absorbing the weight of those words. He had walked into the shop thinking he was about to lose something important. Instead, he had walked into a moment he never expected one, that connected him to a part of his father he had never known existed. Mr. Lawson continued gently, your father once gave me advice I will never forget. He told me that when life feels heavy, sometimes all you need is a reminder of who you are and where you come from. He believed that memories and values were stronger than any challenge. Daniel felt his throat tighten. Those words sounded exactly like something his father would say. Mr. Lawson gave a small, kind laugh. You know, he wasn't loud or bold. But when he spoke, everyone listened. He didn't try to lead people, just followed naturally. Daniel could almost see it, a young William Carter. Calm and steady, surrounded by people who trusted him. It made him feel proud. Proud in a deep way he hadn't felt in years. "I never knew he influenced people like that," Daniel said. "He influenced more people than he realized," Mr. Lawson replied. "And seeing you today, seeing how you carry yourself even in difficult times, I can see his spirit in you." Daniel felt warmth spread through him, but it also made his chest feel tight. "I don't feel strong," he admitted. "Strength isn't about feeling strong," Mr. Lawson said kindly. "It's about continuing to move forward, even when the path is unclear. And you're doing that." Daniel looked at the medal again. He had walked in thinking it was just a piece of metal he needed to sell to survive another month. But now it felt like a bridge to a part of his father's life he didn't know. A bridge he had almost traded away. Mr. Lawson lifted the wooden box gently and pushed it toward Daniel. "These belong to you," he said. "Your father wanted them kept safe, and I believe he would want them in your hands now." Daniel felt his breath catch in his chest. He looked at the box, at the photographs, at the memories preserved inside. "But I can't take this," he said softly. "It's too much. And I came here because I needed help, not more things to carry." Mr. Lawson smiled with gentle understanding. "Sometimes the things we carry are not burdens. Sometimes they are reminders of the courage we haven't lost." Daniel opened the box carefully. Inside, the photographs seemed to glow under the soft shop lights, their edges worn from years of quiet waiting. He lifted one photo and traced his father's face with his thumb, marveling at how familiar yet distant it felt. "I wish I could have talked to him about all this," Daniel whispered. "I think," Mr. Lawson said softly, "that he would be proud of you. Not because of anything grand, but because you're doing your best with honesty and heart." That's how he lived. Daniel swallowed hard. The ache in his chest wasn't painful. It was meaningful. "Thank you," he said sincerely. This means more than I can explain." Mr. Lawson nodded. "There is one more thing," he said. "Something your father told me long ago." Daniel looked up, waiting. Mr. Lawson spoke softly, as though repeating a memory he had kept safe for a long time. He said, "If life ever brings my past back to me through someone dear to me, I hope they find strength in it." Daniel felt the words settle inside him like warm sunlight. He had come to the shop to give up something precious. Instead, he had been given something priceless, and he had no idea yet that the day was about to take an even deeper turn. Daniel stood still, holding the wooden box with both hands, feeling its weight in a new way. It wasn't heavy because of the objects inside. It was heavy because of the meaning they carried. Memories, history. A part of his father's life he never knew. Everything rested gently inside that old box. He hadn't expected this moment. He had walked in hoping to solve a financial problem, and now he stood in the middle of a personal discovery he never imagined. Mr. Lawson watched him quietly, giving him time to absorb everything. The shop owner's expression was calm but full of warmth. The kind of warmth someone gives when they know the moment is important, almost sacred. After a long breath, Daniel finally spoke. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. "This is more than I thought would happen today." "You don't have to say anything right now," Mr. Lawson replied gently. "Just take your time." Daniel looked around the shop. The shelves, the soft light, the quiet air, they all felt different now, as if the moment had changed everything around him. It felt like the past and the present had gently come together. He lowered his eyes and looked at the metal again, lying neatly on the folded cloth. The shine on its surface reflected the warmth of the room. Slowly, he reached out and picked up the metal, holding it carefully between his fingers. It felt familiar, but it also felt new, as if it had more meaning now than ever before. He looked at the name engraved on the back, his father's name, and his eyes softened. "I almost sold this," Daniel said quietly. "I came here thinking it was my only choice." Mr. Lawson nodded slowly. "Life sometimes brings us close to choices we don't want to make. But sometimes, when we reach those moments, something else steps in. Something unexpected." Daniel nodded, feeling the truth of those words. He placed the metal gently back on the cloth and closed the wooden box carefully. "I'm grateful," he said. "Really grateful." Mr. Lawson smiled. "Your father was a good man. If he were here, I believe he would want you to have these things, especially now. When you need reminders of your strength." Daniel felt a gentle ache in his heart. "I wish he were here to tell me these things himself," he said softly. Mr. Lawson's eyes softened further. "Maybe he found a way," he said in a quiet voice. "Sometimes people live on through the stories they leave behind. And sometimes, life brings those stories back to us when we need them most." Daniel let those words sink in. They felt comforting, like a calm voice in the middle of a long, confusing journey. After a moment of silence, Mr. Lawson rested his elbows lightly on the counter. "Now," he said gently, "about the reason you came here today." Daniel's expression grew uncertain again. He had almost forgotten why he had walked into the shop in the first place. Now the weight of that reason returned. The bills, the pressure, the uncertainty of the coming days. "I still need help," Daniel admitted quietly. "Even with this, all of this, I still need to get through the week." Mr. Lawson understood. The kindness in his expression didn't fade. If anything, it grew deeper. "You came to sell the metal," he said softly. "But you shouldn't lose something that carries so much meaning. Not today. Not after everything we've discovered." Daniel nodded, but worry flickered in his eyes. "I know," he whispered. "I just don't know what else to do." Mr. Lawson leaned down for a moment and reached under the counter. Daniel watched with curiosity and a small hint of concern, unsure of what was happening. When Mr. Lawson stood up again, he was holding a small envelope. He placed it on the counter gently, as if it were something delicate. Daniel looked at the envelope, then at Mr. Lawson. "Something to help you," Mr. Lawson replied simply. "Consider it a loan if that makes you more comfortable. No schedule, no pressure. Just a little support for someone who's going through a difficult time." Daniel stared at the envelope in disbelief. "I can't accept that," he said quickly. "You've already given me so much today." Mr. Lawson shook his head slowly. "What I gave you earlier wasn't from me. It was from your father. I was just the one keeping it safe. This," he said, tapping the envelope gently, "is from me." Daniel swallowed hard. "But I don't want to take advantage of your kindness." "You aren't," Mr. Lawson replied firmly but kindly. "Sometimes people need help. And sometimes helping is the right thing to do. If your father were here, I believe he would do the same for me." Daniel's eyes grew a little glossy, not from sadness but from a deep, overwhelming gratitude. "I don't know how to repay you," he whispered. "You can repay me by taking care of yourself," Mr. Lawson said with a warm smile. "And by keeping your father's memory alive. That's more than enough." Daniel took a slow, steady breath. He reached out, but before touching the envelope, he paused again. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. "I'm sure," Mr. Lawson said. With gentle hands, Daniel picked up the envelope. It felt light but significant, like a blessing he hadn't expected. He placed it in his jacket carefully, as if it were something precious. He looked at the wooden box again, feeling the connection it gave him to his father. Then, he looked at the shop owner. "Thank you," Daniel said. His voice was soft but filled with genuine emotion. "I really don't know how to express what this means." "You don't need to," Mr. Lawson replied. "Just remember that you're not alone. People cross paths for a reason." Daniel nodded slowly. "I guess I came here thinking today would be one of the hardest days, but it's turning into one of the most meaningful." Mr. Lawson's smile grew warm. "Life surprises us like that sometimes." Daniel gathered the metal, the pouch, the photograph he had been holding, and the wooden box. He held them all with care, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. It was as if the storm inside him had paused, just for a moment, giving him a breath of calm he deeply needed. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if finding a job would take days or weeks or longer. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a small spark of hope, something gentle, but real. He looked at Mr. Lawson again. "You've really changed my day," he said. "And you've brought back memories I had almost forgotten," Mr. Lawson replied. "So maybe we both got something today." Daniel felt a small smile form on his face, quiet but sincere. "I'm glad I came here," he said. "Me too," Mr. Lawson replied. Daniel took a step back from the counter, ready to leave but not rushing. He turned once more to look around the shop, the old shelves, the quiet light, the air filled with stories of strangers, and everything felt different now. He felt lighter, even though he held a box full of memories. He pushed open the glass door slowly. The bell above it chimed gently, just as it had when he entered. But this time, the sound felt warm, almost like a friendly farewell. Daniel stepped outside, the cool air brushing gently across his face. He stood still for a moment, holding the box close to his chest, feeling the world around him settle. His steps felt lighter as he walked away from the shop, holding not just the items he regained but something far more meaningful. The knowledge that his father's past, and the kindness of a stranger, had brought him strength on a day he thought he had none. And deep inside, Daniel knew this moment would stay with him for the rest of his life. Daniel stood in the middle of the small pawn shop, his hands shaking slightly as he held the old medal and the box of memories. For a moment, he could not speak. His throat felt tight, and his eyes were warm with tears he had held back for years. The shop felt silent, almost peaceful, as if time itself had slowed down to let him breathe, think, and truly understand what had just happened. He had walked in, expecting to give something away. Instead, he was walking out with something far greater than he ever thought he would receive. He looked around the shop again. Everything felt different now. The dusty shelves, the quiet ringing of the doorbell, the soft light from the window. Everything seemed to hold a new meaning. It was no longer just an ordinary place to sell and buy items. It had become a place where pieces of the past had come together, where a connection had been made between two lives shaped by the same man. Mr. Lawson stood quietly behind the counter, watching Daniel with gentle eyes. He did not rush him or push him to talk. He simply waited, giving Daniel all the time he needed. The older man understood how heavy emotions could feel, especially when connected to family and memories. He knew that sometimes silence was the best comfort. Daniel finally looked at him, still wiping the corners of his eyes. "I don't know what to say," he whispered softly. "I came here thinking I had no other choice. I really thought selling the medal was the only way to move forward. And now I feel like I've been given something I never expected." Mr. Lawson smiled, a soft, warm smile that reached his eyes. "Your father would want you to have everything he left behind," he said. "I kept those things safe for many years. I wasn't sure I would ever find the right person to give them to. But today, when you walked in with that medal, I knew it was finally time." Daniel held the medal tightly, as if afraid it might slip away again. His father had always been a quiet man. He had rarely talked about his past, his experiences, or the deeper emotions he carried. Daniel had grown up respecting him, admiring him, but also wondering about the parts of his life that remained hidden. Now, he finally had a chance to see those missing pieces, to understand him better, and to feel closer to him in a way he never thought possible. He opened the box slowly, carefully lifting the lid, as though it contained something fragile and precious. Inside were letters tied with a thin ribbon, photographs with faded edges, and small items that must have meant something important to his father. Daniel touched each thing gently, letting his fingers trace the corners and textures. Every item felt like a small doorway into the past. There was a picture of his father and Mr. Lawson, both smiling, their faces young and full of energy. Daniel stared at it for a long moment. He had never seen his father look so relaxed, so full of life. It almost felt like meeting a different version of him, one he wished he had known while growing up. He looked back at Mr. Lawson with gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you," he said softly. "I don't think you understand how much this means to me." "I understand more than you think," Mr. Lawson replied gently. Your father helped me through some of the hardest days of my life. He was a good man. A man with a kind heart. I always wanted you to know that. Daniel nodded slowly, taking in the weight of those words. For years, he had carried a quiet feeling inside him, a sense that he never truly got to know his father. Now, in one unexpected moment, he felt closer to him than ever. It felt like a gift, a bridge connecting the past to the present. As Daniel stood there holding the items, something inside him began to shift. The worries that had pushed him into the shop, the stress, the uncertainty, the fear began to feel lighter. They were still real, still present, but they no longer felt like the whole world. He had something new now: strength, connection, and a renewed sense of purpose. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. I still have a lot to figure out, he admitted. Life hasn't been simple lately. But today gave me something I didn't know I needed. Mr. Lawson leaned on the counter, his expression still kind. Sometimes life gives us the right things at the right time, he said. And sometimes we find help in places we never expect. Daniel smiled a little. I guess walking into this shop wasn't a mistake after all. It was meant to be, Mr. Lawson said with certainty. Daniel gently closed the box and held it close to his chest. The metal rested safely in his pocket, where it felt warm and steady. He felt as if he were holding not just objects from the past but encouragement, love, and guidance. He turned toward the door slowly. But before leaving, he paused and looked back. I hope we stay in touch, he said. I would like to hear more stories about my father. If that's all right. Mr. Lawson's smile widened. It would be my honor. Come back anytime. You'll always be welcome here. Daniel nodded gratefully. I will. Thank you, again, for everything. With that, he pushed the door open. The small bell above the frame rang softly. A gentle sound that felt almost like a blessing. Sunlight streamed in, warm and bright, washing over him as he stepped outside. The world felt different, lighter, kinder, filled with new understanding. He walked slowly, each step feeling more sure than the one before. The wind brushed gently against his face, and he closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. It felt as if the world had opened a new path for him, a path he had not seen before. He thought about the struggles he still had to face, the responsibilities waiting for him, and the challenges he would still have to overcome. But now, he felt something he had been missing for a long time. Hope, and that hope came from knowing that he was not alone. His father's presence felt close, not as a memory fading in the distance, but as something living in his heart. When he reached home, he set the box on the table and opened it again. This time he took his time reading the letters, looking at each photograph with care, and trying to imagine the stories behind them. He felt pride, warmth, and connection. Each memory felt like a small light, guiding him forward. Later that evening, as he sat quietly with the medal in his hand, he realized something important. He had gone into the pawn shop, thinking he was giving up a piece of his past. Instead, he had walked out with a stronger sense of who he was, where he came from, and who he wanted to become. He did not feel lost anymore. He felt found, and in that calm moment, he whispered softly, almost as if speaking to his father, I'm going to be all right. The night outside was quiet. The stars shone gently through the window, and Daniel felt at peace. He knew tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he also knew he had the strength to face them, carrying the medal, the memories, and the love that had been waiting for him all along.